Hello, it's Peter Wright and Kathleen Beauvais in Ontario, Canada, with episode number 134 of the Yakking Show. This is the show for awakening you to new perspectives for the changing world we live in. If you like our show, we'd love you to subscribe, and then you'll be advised of the next exciting episode. We always have interesting guests. Today's no exception, but before I get her to introduce the guest, I must welcome my co-host Kathleen Beauvais from Ontario and just give her a quick plug and say she wears other hats. And one of her main hats is Kerry Tech Solutions, where she helps you solve all your IT needs in the way of recruiting and that sort of thing. She knows a lot more about it than I do. So welcome, Kathleen. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Peter. Thank you for that intro. And thank you all so very much for tuning into our show. We so appreciate you and we love reading your comments. So please keep those coming. And if anyone out there is interested in being a guest on our show, please don't hesitate to reach out to either Peter or myself. And as Peter mentioned, we do have another special guest with us today. Her name is Lama Younes. Lama, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks, Kathleen. Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me.
So you are the founder of You-ness coaching. So please, for our audience, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you embarked on a career in coaching in particular, and what inspires you about coaching?
Sure. Let me actually tell you, since you just mentioned my name and the business name all at once, it's a kind of a fun fact for listeners that my business name sounds like it's my last name, but it has an extra S because it's actually You-ness, not Younes. But it's a play on my last name, which it makes it very convenient. As my coaching practice actually focuses on career coaching, but really at the core of it, it's really all about bringing out kind of your own uniqueness, actually, is what I'm going to say. And so what I ended up calling it is You-ness because it also happens to be the play on my last name. So that's where that comes from. I've had my coaching practice for about a year and a half. I started just before COVID in the fall of 2019. And that was coming off of a 14-year corporate HR career. Just, in 2019, I happened to kind of do a lot of personal reflection and got to travel and do a whole lot of all those things. And I kind of decided if I'm not going to try this out now, I'm probably never going to try it. So I'm just going to do it now. So I did. And then, after actually COVID hit, it really confirmed to me that it was the right time because there was a lot of changes happening in the workplace, changes happening within people, and their own reflections about thinking about their careers or thinking about their personal lives. And so it seemed actually very appropriate timing to start and to really continue with this type of career coaching. Because like I said, my career coaching is focused on aligning your career with your personal values, your core values, because that's the only way you're really going to be kind of waking up loving what you do every day. I didn't want it for myself. And so I don't want people to be waking up just kind of grunting at the job that they're going at just because it's a job, right? Life is a lot more than our jobs, and it's holistic, right? It's every angle of your life together, not just your career alone or your personal life alone.
Right.
Okay. So we hear a lot about coaching in this day and age, and we are exposed to a lot of coaches on social media, and wherever we look, there's more and more coaches, and it's chartered or published as a career choice for a lot of people. So I think some people might be jaded on coaching, but you say you have a unique approach. So tell our audience about your own unique approach to coaching, Younes.
Yeah. So I'm kind of the reason I did choose coaching as a path right after kind of, again, my corporate time. But the reason I ended up choosing career coaching specifically is so I can capitalize and give people value in that specific area, given that I have that HR background. Mm-hmm. So I've dealt with, all sorts of different aspects of whether it's career development or performance management or whatever you can think of in those 14 years of HR. And I've done that across, I've worked in Canada, I've worked in the US, I've worked in the Middle East. So I've seen a different range and across different businesses of all these types of things. So really the coaching, bringing that background into it can help and encompass whether you're going to be a manager and you're having difficulty managing your team and you want to kind of talk through that, or if you're an individual contributor and you're reporting to someone, but you're still struggling with something with your career. The other part of it is the whole, which a lot of people are, more and more people are coming up with, is the kind of, you know what, I realize that I don't like what I'm doing right now, but I just don't know what else I can do with my life. So I'm just going to keep doing this. And they kind of keep living with the misery and dragging their feet along. But there is a way to do that. And a coach is exactly what you need in a time like that, where you're really kind of, no, I'm going to decide that I'm going to do something about it. When you come to me with coaching, I tell people very clearly from the beginning, I don't have your answer for you once you come, but what I do is I know how to get you to the answer. It's a bit of an art and a science together. It's not just kind of, there are some, specific tools that I use with my clients, but part of it is an art too. Part of it is kind of, as I listen to you actively, what am I hearing in what am I hearing in the things that are not said? What am I hearing in your tone? What am I feeling in the shifts in your energy? And that's where when we kind of put them together, no one can do that on their own. No one should have to do that on their own, right? So this is where I kind of, how I approach my coaching basically with my clients. And I am ICF certified, which is the International Coach Federation. So yeah, I made sure to kind of, tack that onto myself before I jumped into
right.
There are a lot of coaches out there, you're right, that kind of just say, hey, you know what, I'm kind of good at this thing, so I'm just going to coach people on it. But again, because of my extensive HR background, I know that things like being certified and being something that, having something that is worldwide known and a certain benchmark is always valuable to have too.
Sure. I'm just going to jump in there quickly, Kathleen, as well. That HR background sets you apart from most coaches because, for instance, someone who says, I'm having a problem fitting into my management team, for example, if they are telling that to a coach who's had no experience whatsoever of the corporate world and those problems, they're not going to be able to help that person, whereas you've seen it from the other side. Yeah, very good. No, I think that's excellent. Great. Over to you, Kathleen.
So we've already touched on this a little bit in what you just said, but I'd kind of like to take a deeper dive into this. So there are people through the course of their life and their career where they feel stuck in a rut and they don't have clarity in terms of direction. And some may not even know what they want to do with the rest of their lives. So can you take us through the process of how you would go about drawing that out of them?
Yeah, absolutely. I always think of it as starting out with a little bit more self-awareness. So you have to get to know yourself a lot more than you are at in that moment. Because if you're stuck, and people will all, by default say, what do you mean? Of course I know myself. And I'm like, but do you, right? If you knew yourself, then you would know where you do want to go. So doing a couple of self-awareness exercises where you're really extracting your core values, your life values. When these things start, when you put them on paper, when you speak out loud about them, your brain does start to pick out different patterns or different kind of thoughts from, oh, you know what? I remember when I went skydiving that one time, I really enjoyed it. Right? So what is it about skydiving that you enjoyed? Is it the excitement? Is it the, whatever the sport part of it? So being able to kind of pick different bits and pieces from all over the place about things that you love, things that you enjoy. That's where we really start increasing your self-awareness. Once that part is a little bit more, and it does take time to do these things. I also always tell people, don't think it's an overnight thing. Right. It is going to be if you like, this is going to be a long-term solution. So you should expect that it is also going to take some time to reveal itself. So, but starting with like I said, self-awareness. And then doing some, go out and ask a whole bunch of different people of different things, right? I tell people informational interviews are super, super valuable. Go out and talk to a whole bunch of people who you may not even think that you're interested in what they're doing, right? Because you never know what's gonna kind of click when you hear about it. So doing some more of that exploratory stuff to kind of round out and see if any of that stuff is going to match your core values. Why are these values important to you is really what you're going to be able to match with when you talk to different people and expand your awareness also on the outside, right? So you do your internal work and then you do your external work. And then you, again, if it's going to be, let's say we're talking about what other different job can I go to or a different career path, you also have to really, really know what is valuable for you in a workplace and what's valuable for you in the environment or the company that you're going to be in. Make a list of that. You don't have to describe or actually, give me a list of names of companies, but you do have to describe what is valuable for you. Is it flexibility that's most important to you? Is it, the team? Whatever it is, there's a whole bunch of kind of different values, again, that I give people on. Pick out which ones are most important to you. And then as you're looking outside and as you're talking to more and more people, you have to make sure that these companies that you're talking to are matching your values. It's not just going to be whoever comes in and offers you a job. You might be miserable at it, right? I've had that experience myself. A company that's all shiny, but then you go in there and you're like, oh, this doesn't really match my values, and then you're miserable the whole time. So doing, again, extracting all these pieces of information at the end of that 3-step process, more and more things start appearing to you that actually make sense because you now have all this information in front of you. So saying things out loud and putting things on paper in front of you to see them with your eyes and hear them with your ears gives you a different process than just all of these thoughts being inside your head, right? When things are just in your brain, they get really messy, right? But organizing them, putting them outside and allowing someone to reflect things back to you, right? A lot of the time in coaching sessions, when I tell people back what they're saying, they go, oh yeah, I'm like, I didn't actually make anything up. You're the one that said it. But all of a sudden it makes more sense to you when someone is saying it back to you, right? Or it hits in a different way. Yeah.
For sure.
Here's a quick one that while you were talking just occurred to me. Do you find it a lot different working with introverts compared to extroverts? Is the process slightly different or not really? Or do you ascertain that very quickly when you meet them?
That's an excellent question. No, I don't think it's not necessarily an introvert versus an extrovert thing. It's really where on the level of self-awareness spectrum are you?
Okay. No, I just wondered. Interesting, because we fall back on the Briggs analysis so often, trying to analyze people. I wondered if that was relevant. Okay, what I wanted to ask you was one of the tools you use, DISC. Perhaps you could tell our audience a little bit about that. I've used it, and I know a lot of people are not aware of it. I think it's a very useful tool. So perhaps you could talk a bit about that. Absolutely.
I love the DISC assessment. So out of all of the big assessments that are out there, DISC is really great because it gives you enough detail, but it's also simple enough that it doesn't you don't drown in how complex it is. The other great thing about it that is really matching my work is that it's workplace focused, right? So it is about how you, as your personality, that you operate in the workplace. And it is also, it's always giving you how you would work as compared to or with your colleagues who are whatever other profile they are that may or may not be different than yours. So it is, and then the action items that come out of it and the plans that we put together as a result of the assessment are always, again, workplace focused. So it's very much matching or in alignment of the career type of coaching.
And it's very revealing from my experience when you go through that exercise properly with someone like yourself guiding you. You get a really good picture of what you should be looking for or at. So yeah.
Absolutely. And Wiley it's the parent company. It is a very trusted source. They have lots of years and lots of statistics backing it all up. When I was getting certified in that, and they kind of ran us through that. I'm not a numbers person at all, but I still found it fascinating that they had that much statistics behind it to actually, if someone was, and some people are curious about the background of how all of the questions of the assessment work, that there is information out there about how it runs in the background and why it places you where it places you.
Good.
So
Kathleen.
I have a question. I'm going to put my glasses on here because it revolves around a quote on your website, and I think it was one of your blogs. And I don't know if you came up with this quote or if it's something that you found, but I just want to read it for our audience. So it's one about, we're going to talk about failure, or this notion of failure. And the quote on your website reads, "Everything you perceived as negative at some point before somehow turned out to be a positive thing. So at worst, what you're doing now, if not the destination for the moment, is actually preparing you then for the next amazing thing that's about to happen." Is this just about pivoting your mindset away from feeling like a failure, or is there more to it than that?
Is it it's definitely more about the mindset. So yes, no, I just to answer your first question, I wrote that out of my lived experience, basically,
It's
right?
very insightful.
Leaving the first company that I worked for, and I worked for them for 13 years, it was right out of school, and kind of the second employer that I worked with for a very short amount of time. And then when I decided to leave there and kind of took that break, all of these things, for, again, someone who knows me personally, being, a perfectionist or being too picky about details and getting every single thing right, at the moment seemed like it was possibly a failure. I was like, I just left my job without having anything in hand. But again, after, going through, and I got my own coach, right? I did group coaching right out of leaving my job, and I've been coached by several people as I went along. It all turned everything around, and with enough time, it turned all of my perspectives around about these, what I thought were so-called failures, into actually this was opening up something else for me. But I also say what's important about it being a mindset shift rather than just letting it happen to you, is that you have to be willing to see the positive side of it, right? There's a question in coaching that I ask people a lot, which is, when they're kind of very down about something, and I ask them, what is the positive intent behind it? The universe always, I know these sound like cliche quotes, but the universe, everything happens for a reason. So what is the positive intent behind this? There's every side of a coin has two sides. It's the same thing that is bad that is happening actually has another side, that there's a positive intent to it. And so you just got to sit down and say, I am willing to look at the positive intent, and then you will find it. But if you want to just sulk in your misery and see only the bad side of it, that's all that's going to show.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you wholeheartedly, because you are the person that you are today because of everything that you've experienced in your life. Take away some of those events in your life, and maybe some of the wisdoms garnered from that experience would not be with you today. So there is always a positive side, even when in the moment, when you're living through the crap of life, if you will, you don't see it until later on. But absolutely, I agree with that. Peter?
And I think if you look at resilience, my experience, and I'm not qualified, but it's my opinion, that every little bit of adversity you face and overcome makes you a little bit more prepared for the next step of adversity. And we all face adversity at some stage of our life. So I think there's another good side to some of the bad things that happen, that it's preparing you, even if you can't see the bright side at that point in time, it's preparing you for something that you might have to face in the future. So on your blog, you talk about not letting the half-life pass you by. What do you mean? Tell our audience a bit more about this half-life story, because I'm into the second half of my life, as you can see. So I'm very interested in see if I can get another half-life coming along.
So half-life is in that terms, it's in the terms of kind of more of a, I don't know how to describe that. It's something like describing the half-life of an atom. But the reason I say that half-life in that post specifically, I was talking about when you experience something that kind of either really makes you very happy or makes you very sad or depressed or whatever, when in that moment, when you decide to do something, or you kind of decide, okay, I'm at an extreme, what am I going to be doing about this? That excitement or the drive to get up and do something, there's a half-life to it. So that half-life is probably about, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks. It's kind of like when you make any New Year's resolutions, right? The half-life is that period that's immediately following the when you decide to make the change. And then, so if you don't capitalize on it and you don't immediately take the opportunity and do something about it, and do something meaning not just say, okay, I'm going to get up and do something, but actually, buying into the membership, getting yourself committed to something in a way that where you can't pull back. You got to be able to do that commitment in that initial half-life, because after that it's gone and you're going to just go back to your normal, right? You will have kind of calmed down from the situation, and it's just going to keep repeating. And that's what a lot of people do. They miss these half-life opportunities, and then all of a sudden, it's a year, 2 years later, 2 years later, and they're like, oh, nothing happened in my life didn't move on, nothing, I'm still in the same point of, well, it's because you're not taking advantage of that initial half-life of the excitement of, whenever something was happening.
Or conversely, if somebody, and I think you talk about this in your blog posts, is if somebody is absolutely miserable in their position and they've had a horrific day and they are ready to quit, they want to walk out the door, and they just that feeling of, I've had enough. But as soon as they walk away, they go home and they simmer down, and it's past. And they don't do anything about it. They end up getting up in the morning, going back to work, to that same environment, and they end up being there for years on years and years, because they haven't taken advantage of that half-life, right?
Yeah. And just, again, for if to make it a little bit more tangible to listeners to kind of understand this in a down to earth way, the way you will realize that it is getting closer and closer to really, shake up yourself and do something about it, is that you'll find that half-life is repeating more and more frequently. If it's happening every, once or twice a year, you're probably still going to find that you're able to live with it and you just move yourself along. But if you start finding that you're hating your job, or you're thinking these thoughts once a month, once a week, now every day, that should really be the alarm for you to kind of get up and do something sooner rather than later, right? If it's once a year, it's not going to hurt anybody, you won't feel it. But once you find yourself, you're getting into that vicious cycle over and over again, and a lot more frequent basis, that's when really that's your alarm. Get up and do something.
Right, got it. Good.
So we're going to switch gears a little bit and just get to know you a little bit more. And so you mentioned that you have a small baking business. It's a side gig that you have.
I do. Yes.
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love this. Is this a way for you to kind of find balance with all of your interests?
Yeah, you know what? Actually, this started probably back in 2011. I was living in Schenectady, New York, which, if anybody knows it, it is there's not much going on in that little town, right? It's very, very much about kind of where the employer that I used to work for. And so one of the days, I was living alone, and I called my mom. I'm like, this dessert. My mom is a great cook. I really, really want it. There are no Arabic stores around here anywhere. Can you just, tell me how to do it? So she walked me through it. And since then, I've kind of found that I'm like, okay, I want to do more and more. And then I make them. I don't want to leave it in the house. So I take it to the office with me the next day. So then it became an every Friday thing. And eventually, a year or two later, I actually started taking some cake decorating courses, because I just found it so fascinating. So I took a couple of courses at Wilton. And I just love it. I find that it makes people so happy to, even though the cakes were not that, like, they're not any more special, not like a super baker or anything, but it was all about how, when you tailor the decoration to someone, and they eat it with their eyes before the taste, and it made people so happy. And I'm like, wow, this is such, for something that's making me happy, I'm kind of in a meditative state when I'm decorating a cake. So it's made me happy, and now it's making someone else happy. I'm like, oh, this is a winning formula. So I just kind of been doing it on the side with, when I was working and now as a coach, because it's happiness all around. So.
Oh, can't remember
Excellent.
that.
Sounds like a wonderful idea. Yeah. I wish we lived closer. Get something.
And there's this quote out there. I forget the exact wording, but it's always telling you something about about when you're balancing your life, you should find one thing that you what is it? One thing that's going to keep you moving, one thing that you love to do, and one thing that's going to pay you.
Yeah.
Something like that, right? It's a diagram with like these, 3 circles. And that's basically what my baking is, kind of the something that I love to do. It's a hobby. Yes, I sometimes occasionally make money from it, but it's not really for the money. I do it,
Sure.
Me.
Sure.
Wonderful. And I do a few really physical things, not baking. I once baked a pie, but I cut wood. I heat with wood. So I find the manual work is such a good contrast to the computer work and the writing, creative and thinking, that at a weekend when I'm cutting wood or cutting grass on the farm, and I can just switch off and enjoy the process. It's therapeutic, I find. And I guess it's women who knit tell me the same thing, that they find knitting wonderful in that respect. So I've got a question I ask all successful people, and I'm putting you in that category from listening to you talk. And that intrigues me as a study of human nature over a long life now. In your experience, what's the single characteristic that sets apart the successful from the average? When I say successful, because you're a coach, I don't only mean successful in making money. Let's say successful in having a well-balanced, happy, and contented life. Is there one thing that sets those people apart from the people who are stuck in that rut we were talking about, who are miserable?
I think different people will tell you different things about this, but from my nature, from my experience, what keeps me on the more successful side of things is consistency. Mm-hmm. When I'm consistent with, my routines, my habits, even going to coaching, for me to get coached, right? Being in a consistent state is always going, even if you don't know, what you're doing well enough, being consistent about it is eventually going to get you there. That's actually only thing that's going to get you there. So consistency and persistence, right? Kind of.
Yeah, sure. Sort of go together. And those two, and in that combined, have come up quite a lot, haven't they, Kathleen?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting because we almost every show we ask that particular question, and we're seeing patterns, aren't we, Peter? It's
absolutely.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of them.
And we're probably seeing no more than one or two outliers, but I would say they could all be grouped into about six characteristics. And this is one of the main ones. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Perseverance comes into it a little bit. No, thank you for that. I appreciate that. So have we got a minute? We got a minute before Kathleen asks you how people can get hold of you. You said that you'd worked you said in North America and the Middle East, and I think you said Europe as well, did you? 3 continents?
No, just North America.
Okay, so major differences in business, in coaching, in HR between Middle East and North America?
I find the major differences is in the pace of life. Mm-hmm. Because that's what always ends up kind of then mildly adjusting what I have to do when I'm coaching someone in those different places. In Canada, we are a little bit more laid back. Right. When I was working in the US, people they're usually bigger companies, they're global. There's a faster pace. Everyone's moving around. They have more things that they have to deal with. Mm-hmm. So I found that dealing with, employees or working with employees there is different. And the Middle East is just, it's craziness. It's all over the place, right? And again, mm-hmm. pace is a little bit faster there. It took me a while to adjust, actually, when I came back to Canada after working outside for a few years, because when I came here, I was like, why is everyone so quiet and not doing anything, right? So I had to adjust myself, right? But yeah, it's all about kind of the environment. Really, the environment that you're in is very much a determining factor. Yeah.
I had to ask you that. I spent most of my life in Africa, and I find huge differences in pace of life and the way things are done as well. So thanks for that. Over to you, Kathleen.
Well, we're almost out of time, Lama. Can you tell us how people can contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. The easiest way to contact me and to find me consistently is on Instagram and on LinkedIn. So on Instagram, my handle is Career Coaching by Lama. That's, again, where you'll find me, almost daily posting. On LinkedIn, I'm a little bit more business focused and a little bit more career focused. Again, my profile on there is just Lama Younes. You can find me on there. You can also find You-ness Coaching, but I post mostly from my personal account.
Excellent.
Excellent. And your website, we'd like to put your website on there as well.
Yes, and my website is You-ness.com. So the one with .ca, sorry, with the double S,
Double S, You-ness. Got it. Okay, we'll put all that on there. Excellent.
I apologize for the mix-up there.
No problem at all. Excellent. Thank you very much, Lama.
Yes, thank you so much for being with us, Lama. And thank you all very much for tuning into our show. And again, we love reading your comments, so keep those coming. And anyone out there interested in being a guest on our show, please don't hesitate to reach out to either Peter or myself. And until next time, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.